Hi, I'm Abby Paige Stevens here at Stitchin Heaven, and this is Stitchin' with Abby. I'm here to share with you all of the latest and greatest projects that we have coming for you here at Stitchin Heaven. The project I have to share with you today is called String Mountain. It's a fun, quick string piece foundation technique that I'm excited to share with you. Please hit the notification bell and the subscribe button so that you can keep up with all that's happening here at Stitchin Heaven. Come on and let's get stitchin'. Thanks for joining me here on Stitchin' with Abby. I'm excited to share with you this project. Behind me I have a quilt called String Mountain. And this is a fun, easy project that I'm sure that you could get done in an afternoon. It uses a foundation piecing technique. I do want to let you know that we will have the patterns available here in the shop, as well as kits ready and cut for you featuring the fabrics that we have here behind me. This quilt features the fabric line. It's called Gala by Whistler Studios for Wyndham Fabrics. It's a really fun collection that features a lot of really interesting textures, lends itself to a little bit more modern style. But the colors are really like kind of rich, dark, and a little bit moody, but then it's got this pop of like these bright oranges in there that really give it some good interest. And so we thought this would be a fun collection to use in this project. The tools we've used for this project are first my trusty Sew Line Trio pencil. It's got multiple colors of lead in it, so it makes it easy to use on multiple shades of fabric. My snips, of course, a rotary cutter and our rotary cutting mat. We're going to need just a few pins for this project. And the ruler that you are going to want to use is the Creative Grids. It's a 10.5-inch square, and it's the perfect size for the blocks that we'll be cutting today. I'm also going to be using today our Martelli rotating mat. This makes it so that when we get to a point where we are cutting our squares into triangles and also trimming our squares, this rotating mat is going to make it really easy and simple to do that without having to fuss with moving our fabrics around. So we will start this project by cutting 10.5-inch foundation squares. This is going to be what we add our pieces on top of and sew everything to make the pattern that you'll see behind me. You are also going to cut some 2.5-inch strips. Now this project is really friendly for fat quarters or for using like a jelly roll collection of fabrics, or you can just cut a 1/4 yard of just regular with the fabric yardage. So it's a good way to use up scraps in your stash. And this is it's scrappy, so not everything has to match perfectly. You're going to be spreading out your pieces all throughout the quilt. So you'll start by cutting 2.5-inch strips, and they are at 16 inches, 14 inches, 10 inches, and 6 inches. To start out here, we are going to take our foundation block. Again, it's cut at 10.5 inches. I've got a few here, so I just need one for now. And we are going to take a long ruler and draw a line from corner to corner to help us get placed, to get our first piece placed on here. Next, I'm going to take a 16-inch strip and lay it out, and I will use my long ruler again. And this is a 2.5-inch strip, so I want to mark halfway down the length of this. And so I'm going to measure 1.25 inches because that is half of 2.5 inches. And this is a dark fabric, so I'm going to switch to my white lead here. There we go. And that might be difficult for you to see, but I can see it. So now this is I would say this is the trickiest part of this project. So we want to lay this first piece across here so that the center line lines up with that marked line on the foundation fabric. If you have a light table, that might be helpful to use. I'm just going to kind of flip this up here. And eyeball those lines, and that looks pretty good. And I'm going to stick just a couple of pins in there to hold it in place while I take this to the sewing machine. Okay, when I take this to the sewing machine, I am going to sew directly on that line. This is really just a base stitch to keep it in place. We're actually going to be cutting along that stitching line later. So I wouldn't worry about like adjusting your stitch length or anything on your sewing machine. Again, this is just a stitch to hold this piece of fabric in place. All right, I know this looks a little strange having that seam on the right side of the fabric, but I promise it's going to be okay, so just stick with me. All right, so I've got my first piece on. Now I'm going to take my next size down, which is my 14-inch strip. And I'm going to line it up with the edge. I'm going to make sure that it hangs over the square on both sides so I get full coverage. And I will take that to the machine and I will sew a 1/4 inch along the length. Now that I have my 14-inch piece sewn on, I'm going to fold that open and take it to the iron and press that open. We just want to make sure that that lays nice and flat, that the seam's completely open. So I've got that nice and pressed open, and now I'm going to add my next piece, which is my 10-inch piece. And I will pick a completely different color because I want it to be nice and mixed and fun. And again, a 1/4 inch seam along the length, making sure that I've got overhang on each side so that it covers all the way. And again, I'm going to get that to the iron and get it pressed open. And there we have it. So now I am going to place my last piece, which is a 6-inch piece. Let's see. Ooh, I like this one. And the same thing, make sure that we're overhanging on both sides and a 1/4 inch seam along the length. I've got that sewn on now, and I will take that and press that one open. All right, you can see here on this corner that I'm not quite completely covered, and that's because the foundation block is oversized. As we sew these pieces on, that that block is going to want to shrink a little bit. And so when we trim this down to the correct size, that is going to go away, and so it's not a problem. So do not worry about that. Now that we've got all of our pieces on this side, we are just going to repeat those same steps on the opposite side to finish covering our foundation square. So I'm going to get that done, and I will be right back with you. All right, I've got all the rest of my pieces sewn on here. I do want to make note that I'm not mirror imaging my fabrics on the other side. I used a completely different strip for each size so that we get lots of variation within our blocks. I'm going to set the rest of my pieces aside. Those will be used for other blocks at another time. And this is where we want to pull out our rotating mat. So I'm going to flip this upside down so that the foundation fabric is looking at me. And I am going to need my 10.5 inch square. And we're actually going to trim this down to 10 inches, okay? So we previously cut the foundation at 10.5, and now we're going to trim it to 10 inches. And we do that by lining the diagonal line on the ruler with that original basting seam that we made down the center. Once I have those two sides cut, I'm going to rotate to my next side, and we're going to slide this down, still keeping the diagonal lined up with our original basting line. Give that a rotate. I now have my block trimmed down to 10 inches. You see I've got that lined up there on the ruler. And I am done with this now and can set that aside. And I am also done with the rotating mat. So I'm going to slide that to the front here. And this is what our block looks like. Our next step is to layer this with our background square. So I have pre-cut a 10-inch square. This is a fabric that I would say reads as a solid. It has a little bit of a print to it, but it's mostly solid. It's a tone on tone. And I'll line that up nice, neat, and tidy. I'm actually going to flip that over. And we are going to go back and we're going to stitch 1/4 inch away from our original basting line. So essentially, if you know how to put together half square triangles, this is what we're doing. We're now creating half square triangles. Okay, and now I will go down the other side of my basting line. Now you can see that I have my stitching on each side, 1/4 inch away of the original basting line. And I am now going to actually slice right on top of that original basting stitching from corner to corner. And we now have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each side. So now when I open this up, there we go. I have a half square triangle with half of it is nice and striped and the other half is my background fabric. And I'm going to get those pressed open. I'm going to go ahead and press towards the solid fabric, so then that way the bulk of the foundation fabric doesn't get in the way. So there's one. And two. Now we're going to take these and we're going to rotate them. I want to make the mountain face me here. And we're going to make a mountain out of our two blocks. We'll layer those together. And we'll stitch a 1/4 inch along that edge. And there we have it, one string mountain. I'm gonna press that, and I'm actually gonna press these seams on the back open. Because I have all those extra layers with the foundation. So I just wanna make sure that that gets nice and flat and open in there. I'll press it from both sides. And there we have it, one completed string mountain block. I love this technique here with the foundation piecing in that it makes it so that we don't have to mess with weird triangle corners. We are not working on point here. We were just working on that foundation square and then making half square triangles once we were done with that foundation. So it makes it a really simple, fun, quick, easy project to put together. You will make 18 full string mountain blocks, and then you will make leave 6 blocks as half blocks. As you can see, as we put this together, the rows are alternated. So you'll want to make sure that you leave 6 blocks that are not put together. Thank you so much for joining me as we put together this string mountain project. Again, we will have kits available here at Stitchin Heaven in the store and also online at stitchinheaven.com. We will have patterns in printed and digital version available for you, also in the shop or online. And I hope that you will hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can keep up on all that's happening here at Stitchin Heaven. And I will see you next time. Bye.